You're hearing the same things, Ryan, that I'm probably hearing, which is we're going to have a new set of hearings soon. Maybe like next week, kind of soon.
Bryce Zabel is not the only person to indicate that we are set to get more UAP hearings very soon. The most recent hearing we had happened on May 17th and was conducted by a subcommittee of the House Intelligence Committee. Indeed, this was the first UAP hearing the United States had in 54 years. In this video, I will cover what many credible people are saying regarding the prospect of having new UAP hearings very soon. Here is what biologist Gary Nolan of Stanford University had to say about the prospect of upcoming UAP hearings very soon.
I already know that there are additional hearings coming. When they will happen, not quite sure, but probably within the next few months. On the Senate side, and as well probably a follow-up congressional one. So to me, that's exciting, and it's a sea change.
I agree with Gary that the knowledge of additional hearings coming on UAP is indeed exciting as well as a sea change. For me, these hearings could be perceived as a culmination of 4.5 years of progress, but not the final culmination. The final culmination, according to my subjective assessment, is that we will eventually be given data on UAP that leaves no or little question to the truth about their origin, at least in terms of where they do not stem from. In the following clip from Vinny's fine interview, Gary Nolan goes into where the United States Congress is regarding drafting language for giving witnesses immunity so that they can testify about UAP without being prosecuted.
And one thing that a lot of people have been discussing is this word amnesty, which I know that you were more happy using the term immunity. So do you feel like that is something that will be coming? Do you know if it's happening or not?
Well, I know it's happening for sure.
Okay.
It's 100% happening. I was speaking to some people about it on the inside, and the wording is, in the 80%, 90% done point.
I really like this idea that components of the U.S. Congress are setting up immunity for future witnesses to come forward so that they don't retreat into the shadows, and we put an end to what many perceive has been many, many decades of obfuscation and lies and misleading the public. This action by the Congress, and I do assess that Gary Nolan is a very reliable source, so I think it's probably true. But anyways, this action by the Congress only goes to underscore how serious whatever components are responsible for this drafting language are about getting to the bottom of what UAP are and the extent of what the United States government knows about it. On May 28th, Dave Scott on his show Spaced Out Radio held a panel, and Jimmy Church conveyed what he anticipates is in the near future regarding UAP hearings. And it should be noted that he has conversations with Lue Elizondo very often. So that would be at least one of his connections, assuming that's the only one. Anyways, here's what he had to say. And I know as a matter of fact that Lue's efforts and Chris Mellon's efforts and others pushed to get this hearing happening. And I know that right now as I speak to you, and again, this is speaking as a matter of fact, there are meetings going on in Washington, D.C. right now to get more hearings happening very quickly. So what we're going to see develop in 2022 is incredible. Are we moving towards the big D? I'm feeling it. I am feeling it. I've been at this for 50 years, Dave. 50 years. And at this point in the game for me, I am willing to just let the machine play. The chess game that is going on right now, there are moves on this chessboard, one from one side, one from the other. And then there's another move, and it's a delicate thing. And I know that some people want this to happen right now, overnight. It's not quite going to play out that way. But the developments that are happening right now, and I expect some announcements early next week. I'm just saying this on your show, that I expect some announcements early next week. I think they're going to be eye-openers, and we're going to move this thing forward. So Lou's efforts and Chris's efforts and others, those are the public faces right now. Those are the ones that are forward-facing, have been tremendous, and here we go. I'm just telling everybody, buckle up. It's about to get a little crazy. On May 26th, on Coast to Coast AM, Australian investigative journalist Ross Coulthart had to say the following regarding future hearings. I think there is going to be a dramatic growing of awareness around the world. I can't see it not happening because what's being unleashed now is a slow broadening of human awareness, especially as the witnesses get called before the Congress, because I'm told there are soon going to be more congressional hearings, and they won't be the wet, limp lettuce leaf drips that we saw getting evidence the other week. These will be witnesses who are apparently prepared to testify about what they know. And speaking of a dramatic awareness of this issue, UAP growing around the world, Ross Coulthart also had to say this from the same interview. I think the world is finally waking up, George. I mean, my industry, the media industry. I don't think it realizes yet quite how much has been manipulated for much of the last 50, 60 years since a very deliberate decision was made by the US government, the CIA, the Robertson panel, to essentially ridicule and stigmatize UFOs, UAPs. And you know, we've all been told for the last 70 years, or at least for the last 50 or 60, that it's rubbish. We should ignore UFOs. We should treat them with ridicule and contempt, when in fact, all along, are now convinced the US government, my government, British, French, Russian, Chinese governments, they've been monitoring this phenomenon for a very long time. They've been taking an extremely close interest in it, and they've never stopped investigating. Speaking of the media, this is what disclosure advocate Stephen Bassett had to recently say regarding coverage of UAP. UAP news is now gushing like a broken water main. I can barely keep up with it. Nice. And here's what journalist Jazz Shaw had to say about the proposition of upcoming hearings. Hearing that there could be a U.S. Senate UAP hearing as soon as next Thursday or Friday. Stay tuned, UFO Twitter. Condor Man responds. Next means week of June 6th. So everyone understands. Senate is on vacation for Memorial Day until then. In the following clip from the podcast Need to Know by Bryce Zabel and Ross Coulthart, Luis Elizondo talks about what I think he's referring to is that components of the Pentagon are emphasizing things that are really not relevant to the UAP issue.
Now, the problem is they're considering this air trash, space junk, and debris, quadcopters and drones, when we're really talking about breakaway technology. This isn't, we're not talking about, look, I hate to say this, folks, but at 30,000 feet, doing 2,000 miles an hour, that's not a quadcopter. Okay, never has been, and never will be.
No.
So if it helps you have the conversation by having these little anecdotes that we have drones and things, fine. You know what? If it helps the conversation in the short term, but as these hearings progress, more and more detail is going to come out, more and more fidelity, where it will become very clear we're not talking about drones and quadcopters.
So this is a really interesting statement by Elizondo. And if you want to check out this interview with him, which I recommend, a link to it is in the description below. But he said that as the hearings progress, more and more information and fidelity is to come forward that makes it clear that we're not dealing with quadcopters or drones. We're dealing with something else. And Elizondo has been explicit that what we're dealing with is breakaway technology of unknown origin. And I'm just going to say it right here. I'm not a prophet. I'm not psychic. But my subjective anticipation is indeed Elizondo is correct. That is the direction we are going to go in as hearings progress. Not in the direction of, so nothing new is being brought to the table. It's just a nothing burger. There's nothing to see here. No, that's not what's going to happen. The Congress is going to get higher and higher fidelity data. And when they speak about the UAP issue, their rhetoric, their discussion and public conversation is going to reflect that truth. In other words, this will escalate further, in my opinion. But of course, as I always tell my audience, I could be wrong. Now, This brings me into a statement made by Bryce Zabel from an interview that I conducted very recently, and it was a great interview. And you can also check that interview out by going into the description below. I will link it. But in the following clip from the interview that I conducted with Bryce Zabel, he spoke about the necessity of what has to happen moving forward when it comes to the moves the Pentagon must make in order to level with the people.
But the thing that I would say you can't screw around with anymore is the most basic thing, which is we have now pretty much been told in reports that this is not our black technology flying around because we wouldn't be harassing our own military. We've been pretty much told by the top level people that it's not China and it's not Russia. And so I always say, if that's the case, do the math. I mean, who else is that left? And so they can fuss the details and allow the details to bleed out a little bit at a time. But the basic thing that they have to come clean about is it's not us, it's not Russia, it's not China. It's not a human intelligence we're dealing with here. That we're confirming. They have to do that, and then they have to let the ride begin.
Booyah!
Is there any prospect at all that you would be deposed under oath in an open public hearing?
Now, as far as going up to Congress, if there are more hearings, which I suspect there will be, you better believe it. I will absolutely go and testify along with several of my colleagues.
Very exciting time. We got a lot to do. We got to get to it. Just imagine Luis Elizondo testifying in a public, open hearing. You can't tell me that's not lit. If you tell me that's not lit, I call you a liar. That's lit, my friend. Elizondo was the former head of the UFO study efforts in the Pentagon. And he's been very clear about the nature of UAP that are interesting, not ones that are readily identifiable like quadcopters and drones. And I can't stop thinking about the quote from Ross Coulthart, where he said that he's heard there's going to be more hearings and the witnesses are going to get much better, and they're going to testify about what they know. Recently, in a preview video for my interview with Bryce Zabel, I communicated that to the best of my ability to anticipate, which may not be very good, I anticipate that we will have disclosure within 24 months. And it's clear as day that the Congress, they're pursuing this issue in an aggressive way. We know that by the legislation they recently passed to investigate UAP, by their push for hearings, and they're communicating that they're not happy with the Pentagon's handling of UAP transparency. Representative Mike Gallagher said that very clearly recently, that they're not being straightforward. They're not giving clear answers. They're obfuscating. That's what I recollect that he said. We still have a good amount of time left in 2022, and we've come a long way. We're now in the thick of UAP hearings. We only had our first UAP hearing, and I think they're going to get a lot better. Revelatory, if you will. The house of cards is falling, baby. Please do not forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support my channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You could become a patron. You could become a YouTube member. You could even give me a one-time donation. All of those potentialities are in the description below that you can click. or you could just give me a like on this video, and I will appreciate it so, so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.